AgriTalk.
It's time for AgriTalk, a discussion of issues and events important to rural America. Here's Mike Adams.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to AgriTalk. We are in downtown St. Louis for the 26th Annual International Fuel Ethanol Workshop and Expo, and we'll get an update on key issues facing the ethanol industry from industry leaders here on our program today. And it's brought to you by the folks at Eisenmann. Eisenmann is a global environmental solutions provider to the ethanol industry, with U.S. headquarters just outside of Chicago. In addition to having the largest installed base of air pollution control equipment, regenerative thermal oxidizers, Eisenmann offers anaerobic digestion, biogas technology that provides energy savings as well as improved performance on the front end for ethanol plants. So our thanks to the folks at Eisenmann for making our broadcast possible today from this Fuel Ethanol Workshop and Expo here in St. Louis. We have a lot to cover on our program today, so let's take a look at the news. And on the along the lines of renewable energy, interesting survey just out. The results are just out. As the U.S. Senate is considering legislation that includes reinstatement of the biodiesel tax incentive, a new poll released by Stanford University found 84% of respondents favored federal tax breaks to encourage alternative energy, including water, wind, and solar. Researchers at Stanford University's Woods Institute for the Environment interviewed 1,000 randomly selected adults nationwide June 1st through June 7th for the survey. And again, 84% saying they favor tax breaks for the renewable fuels industry, the alternative energy industry, and that is a key topic right now, not only for biodiesel as they try to get theirs back, but for the ethanol industry, looking ahead to the end of this year, and for the ethanol industry, it's called VTEC, that tax incentive is scheduled to come off the books at the end of this year unless it's renewed, and the ethanol industry certainly doesn't want to go through what the biodiesel industry is going through right now. I want to talk about that with John Urbanchuk. John is technical director for Entrix and, of course, has done a lot of economic analysis for the ethanol industry for many, many years. John, good to see you again. What's at stake here? If VTEC expires at the end of this year, if it's not reinstated, what impact would that have on the ethanol industry?
Well, Mike, unfortunately, we've got a good case study, as you pointed out, and that's the biodiesel industry. Now, we looked at this at the end of last year and suggested that if the biodiesel tax credit would expire, that in fact we'd see a dramatic impact on the biodiesel industry, and it's happened. And we suspect that we'll see the same kind, perhaps not as large, but a significant adverse impact on domestic ethanol production. As you know, the VTEC, as you point out, expires the end of this year, provides a 45-cent a gallon tax credit to the blender who buys the ethanol, and it's a demand enhancement. So the critics point and say, well, listen, if you've got a mandate to use it in the renewable fuel standard, why do you need a tax credit? Well, the renewable fuel standard says we've got to use ethanol. It doesn't say we have to make ethanol. And what will happen if you take that tax credit away, since it's already been embedded in the price of ethanol, you're going to effectively reduce the profitability of ethanol production domestically in the United States. The other part of this is that, as you know, we've got a secondary tariff that accompanies that keeps taxpayer dollars from going to foreign producers, since the VTEC applies to ethanol regardless of where it comes from. If the VTEC goes away, so does that tax credit, which means so does the tariff, excuse me. And what that essentially means is that we're going to be providing an incentive for foreign producers, Brazil and others, to step in and supply the domestic market. And as a consequence, we're going to end up shipping offshore another industry and further deteriorating our energy security, because not only now we'll be more dependent on oil, but we'll be more dependent on ethanol and other biofuels as well.
And the other lesson we have learned with biodiesel, once that expires, look how hard it is to get it reinstated. Here we are halfway through the year, and they're still trying to get the tax incentive back for biodiesel.
That's right. It's very, very difficult to get back. This is an unusual year, obviously, because there's an election coming up in November, so it's a shortened year. But it's very, very difficult to get those incentives reinstated after they expire. And so we're working very, very hard to make sure that that legislators understand the severity and the importance of this and the severity of what would happen for the industry. if the VTEC expires. The other thing, as you know, we've looked very carefully at what the ethanol industry provides to the U.S. economy. We figure that without the VTEC, we could see as much as a 38% decline in domestic ethanol production. That works out to about 4 billion gallons. At today's prices, if you don't make 4 billion gallons of ethanol, you're going to spend about $16 billion less in terms of all the inputs. And we work that through, it ends up costing the economy in terms of growth. But more importantly, you're looking at the potential loss of about 127,000 jobs throughout the entire economy. So the impacts of losing that incentive, which would affect the domestic profitability and domestic production, are pretty draconian.
At a time when the industry is just now starting to bounce back from a rough economic time of the downturn in the economy and all that's gone on, that would be a devastating blow to an industry trying to recover from that. Thanks, John. Good to see you again, and we appreciate the update.
Thank you very much, Mike.
That is John Urbanchuk, Technical Director for Entrix, again, economist who's done a lot of economic analysis for the ethanol industry. We'll be talking much more about that VTEC situation here on our program today from the Fuel Ethanol Workshop in St. Louis. Our poll question this week at agritalk.com, again, it is Dairy Month. We're asking you, what type of milk do you typically drink? Whole, 2%, 1%, or skim? Log on and vote. agritalk.com. We'll have the results for you coming up on Friday. All right, here in St. Louis at the Fuel Ethanol Workshop, we'll take a break, and when we come back, our good friend Bob Dineen, President and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association, get a state of the industry report from him and look at some key issues, including that E15 announcement from EPA. That's next on AgriTalk.